Hello there, history nerds. My name is Shannon Butler, and I'm the historian from the Poughkeepsie Public Library. Now, you might be asking yourself, what is she doing in the cemetery? This isn't just any cemetery, this is the Poughkeepsie Rural Cemetery. But you might still be thinking to yourself, okay, still, why? Well, cemeteries are important.
Graveyard.
Yeah, cemeteries.
Graveyard.
Cemeteries.
Graveyard. Graveyard.
Did you know there's a difference between cemeteries and graveyards? As a matter of fact, cemeteries, which comes from the Greek word for sleeping place, is land specifically designed as a burial ground. A graveyard primarily refers to a burial ground within a churchyard, but the two are interchangeable. What's important is cemeteries are not just for the dead, they're for the living as well. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, that's creepy. But, as a historian, most of my job consists of reading, writing, and talking about dead people. In the 19th century, there was an entire movement known as the rural or garden movement, which its entire purpose was to make cemeteries beautiful. Parks, places where people can go and walk and enjoy being surrounded by the dead. These particular places were designed with pathways, gardens, tree plantings, and even man-made ponds. Here in Dutchess County, we have several neat cemeteries and graveyards, and even some family cemeteries, which are obviously cemeteries with a specific family buried within. Every one of these places has some fascinating historic characters. So what do you say we go pay our respects? This is the grave of Jane Matilda Boland. She was the first black woman in this country to graduate from Yale Law School. She was also the first to be admitted into the bar of New York City and the first black female judge in the United States. And here she is, right here in Poughkeepsie. This gallant young man behind me gave his life for his country. He served in World War I. His name is Lieutenant Tolman Wheeler. He died September 6, 1918, in France. This portion of the cemetery contains graves that were once located on the northern limits of the city of Poughkeepsie from 1810 to 1958. The ground then became the site of what used to be known as St. Francis Hospital. These are some of the oldest graves in the cemetery. This land used to be part of the Livingston property, and some of these folks here are indeed Livingstons. I'm currently standing in another graveyard of sorts. It's not a rural cemetery, though they do call it one. This is the Crum Meeting House Cemetery, or graveyard if you will. Now, it doesn't have any of the things that would make it a rural cemetery. There's no fancy manicured gardens, there's no pathways, there's no mausoleums to speak of, or fountains or ponds. It does have a beautiful Quaker meeting house that dates back to the 18th century. This is the Crum Elbow Meeting House. Now, there's some interesting people buried here, most notably a famous photojournalist. His name is Eugene Smith. Eugene Smith was quite famous in the 20th century for taking some provocative photographs. He's buried here along with several Quakers going back to the 18th century. Now we're standing at St. James Episcopal Church graveyard. This started off as a family burial ground. Before the church, which is just over here, was established in 1811, the first people to be buried here were back in the 18th century, members of the Bard family, because, after all, this land belonged to the Bards. As a matter of fact, Dr. John Bard was the first to be buried just behind us. There's a lot of really cool, fascinating people buried here, so I thought we'd take a look at just a few of them. This is the grave of Morgan Lewis. He served in the American Revolution and later served as governor of New York from 1804 to 1807. And for some reason, he's buried under what appears to be a bathtub. John Salvage Hawley invented the household plunger. And with the way y'all been buying up toilet paper these days, rest in peace, my man.
Ogden Livingston Mills is buried in this mausoleum. He was a Republican congressman and served as a Secretary of the Treasury. But you'll notice how his mausoleum very closely resembles his home. This is the grave of Marge and Les Antrip. They were cooks for Eleanor Roosevelt when she lived alone at her cottage Valkill. That was one heck of a job. Mrs. Roosevelt was famous for inviting 20 people for dinner at the last second. Marge had to make enough borscht to feed 50 people on one occasion when Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev was coming over for dinner.
This is the Stoutenberg family burial ground. Hundreds of years of Stoutenbergs are buried here. Of course, High Park was originally known as Stoutenberg, settled by Jacobus Stoutenberg back in the 18th century. Did you know that cemeteries are excellent places for social distancing? The closest body is 6 feet away. No? No? Anybody? Okay. In all seriousness, though, graveyards, cemeteries, burial grounds are all vital places for historians. Places like this help us to get a better understanding of who's who, what's what. You can tell a lot about a person about the size of their grave, or even the lack of a proper grave.
This video has been brought to you by the Poughkeepsie Public Library District. Thanks very much for watching.